Another legal cannabis shop opens in the Potsdam area, not the village this time, but the town. The owner got a license because of a certain state program, which, in the state's opinion, rights are wrong. Here's 7 News reporter Sean Brenda.
The firehouse off of U.S. Route 11 has a theme for the fire watchtowers of the Adirondacks, and owner Brian Mandel is excited to be open. Mandel's dispensary opens after help from the New York Cannabis Social Equity Investment Fund, which gives opportunities to individuals impacted by what state officials call unfair enforcement of cannabis laws in the past.
This program shows that, they gave an opportunity. New York's willing to give opportunities when they can, and this is definitely one of them. So it wouldn't have even been possible without them. They did a ton as far as getting me set up.
Mandel says some of the 15 employees he hired along with himself had been unfairly charged with cannabis possession.
So I had a couple minor charges that prevented me from student loans, federal student loans when I was younger. So that's how I got, that was my justice involved for my license.
The State Dormitory Authority helped Mandel find his location.
We work very closely with the design build firms to design and develop the dispensaries themselves for the individuals who are going through the fund.
Mandel says the customers that go through the dispensary will be checked 3 times to make sure that they are of the legal age when purchasing cannabis. This is the 2nd legal dispensary to open in the Potsdam area. The other one is in the Village on Market Street and just opened last week. Sean Brenda, 7 News.